hey again.
Oh, hey.
Oh, hey.
How are you, Jeremy Renta?
I am good, Amy Solara.
I hope everybody else listening to this is able to say the same.
Yeah, seriously, because it's a beautiful day outside. You got air in your lungs.
Yeah, you got eyes in your head.
Yeah, you've made it. You made it this far. I feel like that's something I always come back to. Is like you've made it this far. If nothing else, you're here now. So congratulations.
You're alive.
Yeah, exactly.
You're a human being who's alive.
And you have interest in some really sweet things. So, and thanks for joining us for Mantra and Magic.
And one of the amazing things about you developing interest is that mantra and magic can help you not only develop more interests, but fully absorb all the interests you already have.
Wow. Yeah, it's almost like you're kind of leading into the topic for this week. Man, I couldn't have said it better. So this week we are talking about Saraswati, and we're talking about learning.
We're doing...
And
go ahead.
Doing what? No, I was just going to say, and that's something you and I both, I have, 7 books in front of me right now. So that's something that you and I both are huge fans of.
Damn, you win on the book front. I have 4. Technically, you could count like the other 7 that are lying around the room as books in front of me, but they have nothing to do with what we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, 3 of them are tarot books. So, I mean, they all kind of have a lot of the same information in them, but,
whatever. Book contest. Yes. So that's where we're at. We are official magic nerds. Officially able to wave our little flags of I study dead languages. Which is, I mean, I was looking up Latin today to see if it made the spell sound better, and it did. So I used it.
Again, I gotta say, I feel like that's an old white guy thing, saying that something's dead. They're the one who decided it was dead. It's a conqueror that came in and said, "This language doesn't apply to me."
Are we going to revive?
There's no reason to learn this.
Are we going to be those people?
I feel like it's coming back. There's at least you and I are reading it, so it's not dead. There's 2 people here, at least. And if there's anybody else listening, there's at least that many.
For the sigil workshop that is happening this weekend, had created basically a hand-drawn spreadsheet so that I could draw all the symbols, and one of it had our English alphabet on the left, and then all the corresponding ones of all the other languages that I want people to be able to use next to it. And writing the Sanskrit was calming. It was so weird. I was drawing these really curly cute pretty letters, and it felt already like I was weaving a spell. It was amazing. So if you haven't looked at actual Sanskrit letters, please go look them up. They are magic in and of themselves.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And it'll get to the point too where you'll start to dream about it, and you'll start to see it. The mantra that we're actually working on today, which is it's a Saraswati mantra. It's the Mahavidya mantra. We'll go into it. It's a bunch of seed sounds. It's another freight train mantra. It's a longer mantra.
Right, we're going to do that one second so that you have a short one that you can absorb yourself. That's a Saraswati that it's so phenomenal. Anyway, go on about the Mahavidya.
Yeah. But when I have used it, the same thing with, other mantras, I've noticed, if you're using an Agni mantra, you might notice fire more often. If you're using a Shiva mantra, you may notice things that are penis-shaped, because of the lingam that Shiva is
or you might
represented.
Notice things just dying.
Yeah, whatever. Things that are just exploding, changing form. But when I was, a couple of months ago, I was doing this mantra every morning. I would wake up and it's a long mantra. So doing a mandala of it takes a really long time. Mm-hmm. So I would do a half a mandala, which is still about a 45-minute practice.
Mandala or
a mala, sorry. Yeah. So a full mala is 108 because it's the number of beads.
You're using mandala chant? That's amazing.
No, not quite. But you do a full mala of it. It's 108 times, right? Because there's 108 beads. Right. That's how many times you're putting your prayers out. So I would do a half, and which is technically what a rosary is. The Catholic rosary is 54 beads, so it's half of a mala. again, I feel like white people came in and are like, this is
They
good.
got
This is
lazy.
really cool concept, but yeah, this is way too much, way too many prayers. You know, we could usually with our God, we just say sorry, and then he says Hail Mary, and we're out the door. But I did a half a mala of it, and then literally I took the dog out for a walk. I took our dog Chessie out for a walk, and as I'm walking down the street, there's a gigantic moving truck that for some reason is coming down my street. It's not a through street. There's speed bumps on it, and at the top of it, it says AIM. AIM. Now, Eim is the seed sound for Saraswati, and I was like, well, that seems like a rare coincidence.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, you start to notice those types of things, which may seem kind of coincidental, but
nothing's a coincidence.
But nothing, yeah, you start to realize that nothing is coincidental. There are no coincidences. So, it's small tangent, but it's cool how that kind of, you start to draw that stuff into your life, whether or not it's just, a truck that has the word on it or whatever. It's kind of, it's present. So, and that, I think that comes into manifesting too. It's like, when you start to put more positivity out there, you'll start to notice either more people that are positive that are kind of surrounding you, or I've heard people say too, when I'm talking about something, people who are a little bit paranoid, which I get, because literally if you're talking about something around your phone, yeah, you're referring to me, right? I knew you were. I knew this exactly. But if you're talking, obviously your phone hears it, and then it starts to promote whatever the thing is that you're talking about, right? But
Every time.
Literally, even if your phone's not around, if you start to put something out there that you are wanting, you may start to notice things like ads for like a discount on a thing that you're wanting to buy. It might not be on your phone. It may be that you just see it out in the world. So you may think that that's a paranoia thing, but it's also the fact that that's what you're asking the universe for, So it's going to show up, and how you decide what you're going to do with it is a big thing. Thomas Ashley Farron speaks a lot about this in his books and in his audiobook. But he talks about, pretty much honoring the channel of arrival. That's one of the things that Mitch Horowitz also says. Like, honor the way that the thing is that you're asking for shows up. So if you're really wanting a cure, you're looking for something, you have some type of skin problem, or you have some type of issue that you're putting out into the universe that you want help with, and you're using the mantra. The mantra itself might not be the thing that heals you.
Right.
The mantra itself may actually be drawing another thing in that could help you, though. Like, so if if somebody comes up and says, I remember you were talking about you were having this issue. I found a doctor that specializes in that. Don't turn that down. Don't turn it away. Actually explore the possibility that could be the thing that's actually, what it is that you're looking for.
Right.
Because otherwise the universe is like, I don't know how else to say it any more clearly, I think we talked about this, but when I close my circles, or when I'm getting ready to lay down at night, I always say, if you wish to, like talking to spirit or to any of my guides, I always say, if you wish to speak with me, do so clearly and gently. Mm-hmm. Clearly and gently. You ask specifically how it is that you want the messages to come through. It's going to make it a lot easier on you, as opposed to, if you're, you're looking, you're wanting a job, and you get hit by an Amazon van, and on the side of it says we're hiring, like something along those lines is going to be a little more abrupt. And you're like, there's the sign I was looking for.
Right.
Well,
the other thing too is asking, like, if you're asking before you go to bed, make sure you also ask to remember when you're fully awake, because they might tell you every single night whatever it is, but because you wake up with an alarm, or you just have bad sleep rhythms, or your circadian cycles are all mixed up, you might not remember at all, because your brain literally can't. It's functioning at a not optimum level. And then also asking for things is great and fantastic, and I've recorded the Lakshmi mantra before for other people, but a lot of times what we don't realize is we think of other things while we're saying it. And the second you say Klim, whatever it is you are thinking of, conscious or unconscious, will come towards you. So if you're in a space where you think you're really trying to manifest this thing, it's just not showing up, and you're looking for signs everywhere and you aren't seeing anything, think about what you might be unconsciously manifesting along with it, because the universe might be giving it to you in like heaps and bounds, and you're just not wanting to recognize it, because you think that that's not what you want to manifest. Like where you are in your life is not where you want to be. But in reality, like we said, everything happens for a reason. So exactly where you are is exactly where you wanted to be. And the second you take ownership for that, your magic will just explode into like so much more power, because you realize, oh, I am not only exactly where I need to be for all the lessons that my soul wants to learn and all the connections that need to happen, I'm exactly where I need to be based off of what I was asking for before
Right.
this.
Yeah, I mean, in this vein, I'm working on a new song right now, and usually a tune will come to me. I'll start playing it, and if it feels like it's going to be a little bit more fitting to have a mantra with it, I'll grab a book. I'll kind of see what vibe it is that I'm wanting to go for. I'll look for the meter that wants to actually fit into it, and then I'll put it in. And the song that I'm currently working on is we talked off air about this before, about Kamala, that aspect of Lakshmi, which is desire, but it's like it's physical desire. It's literally like it's raw, earth based. Like it's either whatever it is, the sexual desire, or like literally manifesting, coming out of the dirt, coming out of the back end cycle of death into something new. Um, and my partner Lindsay, who is the lyricist for a lot of the songs that we write as well, she started singing. I'm doing this mantra for abundance. It's calling in Kamala, it's calling in Lakshmi, bring this stuff into me. And then she starts singing over it. Maybe it's a good thing you didn't get what you want. And I was like, I don't think we don't want to combine those two things. I was like, this is literally a magic spell that we are casting. And if you're putting that out there in English, it's going to cause some problems. Now I think the theme itself is actually really cool, because we ask, a lot of times we ask for abundance, and this comes back to the whole idea of being specific. I know seems almost tangential to what the theme of this week's topic is, but when you're, if you're calling in abundance and you're saying, if you're, like you said, you're literally thinking of something completely different, that is going to manifest in your life. And it's a reason why mindfulness is the first practice. When you start talking about yoga, the Yoga Sutras and all the other things, those things are later on down the line. Bringing those things in are much, much further down. It's just like the whole Jedi code. It's like anger leads to whatever. I don't know the Jedi code, but
we'll have to ask Anton.
Yeah, we'll ask Anton. But it's like it's making sure that you have a clean. It's like a tabula rasa to start off with, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that you've got a clean slate. You're working with clean desires. You're making sure that you're doing it for the good of others, even if it's something that is helping you. Make sure that it's not like that you're not doing it out of anger, or that you're not doing it out of lust. Any of the lower chakra stuff. And when I say lower, I mean the stuff that's below root. Any of the energy centers that are actually on the ground that are here. The energy points that are in our legs, which we'll get into at some point as well. But
even in less than that, stop trying to manifest stuff.
yeah, seriously.
Most people are like, how do I make more money? And I want to say, do your shadow work. And it's really hard, because most people just want a spell to make more money. And I want to tell them that if you do a spell to make more money, you're going to end up with a lot more lessons in your lap than you even realized, because that's why money's here. So like, just because we were talking about abundance, if you're trying to do a Lakshmi mantra as part of a spell to generate more money in your life, know that along with that comes all the rest of the churning of the ocean. And we can go into Lakshmi's story later, but essentially she comes out of all of the gods and goddesses churning the ocean of the cosmos as hard as they can to try and generate her. And the first things that come out are all the demons.
Yeah.
So it's that practice of tapas and burning off the bad stuff. It's the practice of really getting to know thyself, which is what the Oracle at Delphi and the Eleusinian mysteries are about. So literally all magic comes back to the fact that we have to recognize that there are parts of us that we try to push away and not acknowledge, And that's where learning comes in. Woohoo! Brought it back.
Yes!
So, the core of magic, all of magic, is unification, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because our current reality is an illusion of separation.
Mm-hmm.
We're having this conversation because you and I chose to incarnate so that we could experience what it was like to not be one with everything.
Right.
So a lot of people get really wrapped up in just meditating on how to be one with everything, and they stop living. They stop having the same kinds of social interactions and being able to hold relationships, and they get really airy and really ungrounded, and they start spiritually bypassing. And so I never want to tell people that that's all you should do, that you should just clear your mind and open up to the oneness. Because yeah, that's the ultimate truth, but you wouldn't have been born if you didn't want to experience something else.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we get to know all the things in order to get to the core of magic? And that's what alchemy always has been about. That's what divination is really about. And today we wanted to talk a little bit about tarot too. And ultimately, it's getting to know yourself so deeply and know your own truth so deeply that nothing outside of you can sway that. No matter how much you love the person, no matter how much you love the situation or the environment, you know that, okay, this is the truth for me.
Right.
And you won't have to push it on anyone else because it won't matter. Their opinion won't matter at that point. So the being in Hindu mythology that leads us down this path is Saraswati, and she is the consort of Brahma, who is of the trinity of the male trinity. He's the creator. He's the one who begins things. And Saraswati essentially begins you on your path of learning, on your path of enlightenment.
Yeah. In Tibetan, she's also the consort of Manjushri, who is he carries the sword of discriminating wisdom. Like he's pretty much swords in the deck of tarot. Is the being able to decide between one or the other. And Saraswati she's the beauty inside of something. She's the elegance that makes up what something is. Like if you have the concept of a sword, or you have the concept of a guitar. I always come back to guitar because I love music. She's also the deity over music and creativity. But if you take the idea of a guitar, you can have something that's just like a box with some strings on it and a hole in the middle of it. Then you start getting into the actual artistry. Lakshmi is the play inside of it. Like how far can this bend, and how beautiful can it become with the swirls or the accents that you can add to something. So
right, she's the Shakti, so she's the enlivening factor. So
exactly.
Brahma can create it all, and she's the one who actually breathes life into it.
Right, and this is again, it's at some point you have to have some type of form. There has to be some type of structure, otherwise it's all air. Right, it becomes too frenetic, it becomes too detached, and there's no guide. There's no direction. So I think that's something the culture that we live in, especially now, there's a lot of deification of masculinity, and even a lot of the masculine, like, I don't know how to exactly put it, but like the brotherhood, like guys kind of trying to get back in touch with their masculinity. There still seems to be a dogmatic masculine structure to it we're the ones who are still deciding. That's not the case. You're the boundary. You're the shoreline. Like men are technically, and that's the whole idea too when it comes to Shiva. Like the Shiva Linga is this static, stationary thing, and then Shakti moves around it, right? So you've got this thing that everything happens around. It's not that the masculine energy imposes anything on the feminine. It just literally gives a container for the feminine energy to do its thing in. So, and that's, again, when it comes to this and when it comes to Saraswati, just get real southern. When it comes to Saraswati, she, you have to have a direction for learning, right? Because you have when you start school, you start off with your basics, and you have the structure of the small things that you learn, and all of these building blocks add up to where you're going. So you still have to have, we still have to have some type of a structure as to the theme that we're working with. So Saraswati's mantra, the basic one is Om, which is the seed sound for the third eye.
Mhm.
Eim, which is the seed sound for Saraswati. It's that is the learning or educational, informational Sanskrit letter, or the Sanskrit seed sound. Saraswati Yay is the yay is what we've talked about before too, which is the Shakti enlivening sound. So Shakti Yay is the back end, and then either Namaha or Swaha. So Om Eim Saraswatiyai Namaha, or Om Eim Saraswatiyai Swaha. Right.
Mhm.
So why don't you go ahead and chant that for us?
Om Eim Saraswatiyai Swaha.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's fun too because Thomas Ashley Braun really goes into this in his book Mantra Sacred Words of Power, but Brahma doesn't really have any mantras because he pulled an ego card at the beginning of time, and Shiva was like, bam, you don't get it anymore. I'm destruction and creation, done. And so if you want to chant to something that's going to be a creative force in your life, Saraswati is kind of the beginning of it, period, because there's only one other chant that mentions Brahma, and you can do that with her. But for the most part, this chant, Om Eim Saraswatiyai Swaha, is the place to begin. And noticing where your mind starts to go as you're doing it, and having like a notepad nearby, and jotting down like all the sparks that are coming through, because just chanting it over and over and over again, you'll start to be like, oh, there was that thing I wanted to investigate. Oh, there's that book I needed to read. Oh, there was that person I have to call. And you start to remember better. You start to feel the direction that it's pulling you, because she knows what you don't know, and she's highlighting it.
Right. I mean, we kind of touched on this when we were talking about the alphabet too. But the like where the energy moves. So right? Like if you say it starts in the back of the mouth and then it moves forward, right? So it feels like it's kind of closing down. You're bringing something into nothingness. There's a mantra for Shiva as well that's how, which is literally how with the M at the back end, and you can feel the energy move how from your chest as it moves up to your third eye. You can feel the vibration as it moves through your body. And Eim kind of has a similar vibe to it. You can feel the energy move across your palate, across your tongue, and then hit you in the face pretty much. But that's kind of the thing, right? That's where your creativity will kind of start to spark. You're kind of drawing that energetic in. Starting from you because you're saying it, but like you can feel where the energy is in your body as you're chanting these mantras. The M itself is kind of the bindu is representative of manifestation, because you're closing it down and you're literally blocking the sound off inside of your body, right? So whether it's Shrim, Eim, Traum, like the energies are moving through your body at a certain way, and then the M closes it off to actually to pull it in, to give it a space, to give it a structure. So I love this stuff.
Well, on like with that, having structure, having a foundation is super important, and being aware of which lineages you want to go towards in order to find that structure is something that this mantra can help you do. If you're chanting it over and over again, you'll start to feel like, I think I really don't resonate as much with this particular kind of yoga practice, but I think I want to go explore this other kind of yoga practice. Like maybe all you've ever done is Kundalini, but now you want to do Vinyasa because you want to move through your body in a different way. Or maybe you've done like a lot of Hatha that's very slow, and maybe now you want to do something a little more upbeat, or vice versa. Maybe now you want to slow down and do a lot of rest, like restorative. And noticing just what the structure is going to influence how you're absorbing so much too. And there are other ways to help with that. And tarot is one of them, and something that Jeremy and I both love. And tarot can help you find those directions. So maybe chanting and then drawing the spread that I would recommend that would be really fast is drawing 3 cards, and the first one saying where am I right now? And the next card saying, where do I think I want to go? And then the next card is saying, where should I send my energy and focus?
Mm-hmm.
So that you're aware of the conscious and the unconscious and the present moment. A lot of people think tarot is just for fortune telling or the future. And in reality, it's one of the best ways to bring you back to the present and bring you back to the real truth of the situation, not a belief about it. And so speaking of 3 cards, we had 3 cards we wanted to talk about in terms of this exact idea of getting to know yourself through traditions and lineages, but then branching out and following your own path beyond that. Okay. Whew. So the first card. The
Hierophant.
It's like a long sentence. The Hierophant. When the Hierophant comes up in a traditional deck, so the original Rider-Waite tarot or something else that's very closely related to those images, you will find a person as the central image, and then 2 smaller or like closer to the viewer, essentially, people watching that first person. So it's kind of a triad. There's a big central figure who's usually got arms raised in some form or fashion, and they look very clerical. And then there's 2 other people looking up at them. And something that I always love about the deck that I use the Wild Unknown Tarot by Kim Krans, and the Hierophant in that deck is actually a raven, and it's holding a key that is being struck by a lightning bolt. So it really is like, here is a teacher who's holding something that's going to unlock the aha within you, which is all you can really ask for, right, in this lifetime, is finding someone who can hand you that book or give you that mantra or send you to the right class that's going to make your brain wake up and remember.
Yeah, and that's the outside guru, right? That's kind of, and coming back to kind of what we were talking about last week, the Hierophant is, it's hard to say outside, because we were talking how on the tantric spectrum, we're all one thing, and we're also, there has to be a separation. You know, for you to be able to have an insight, and for us to be here and manifest, you have to say that my opinion matters. I am my own person, not me, not mine. You start going into sacred ceremony type stuff, right. To not be influenced by an outside thing. But the Hierophant seems to be, to me too, like I think of like the Akashic records, like all information that's out there, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it is an embodied teacher. It can be, we can find teachers everywhere. It could be somebody that you pass on the street who says something that, like you said, is that, and it hands you that key that unlocks whatever that realization is that you need. But the Hierophant also just kind of reminds me of just like all information, but distinguished. Like I mentioned Manjushri, the sword of discerning wisdom. So being able to cut off all the other stuff, so you just have that one piece that you need. Here's that golden head you were looking for. Follow this, and you'll find the rest of your path.
I think it's also like you have to learn the rules to break them. And so if you know, okay, this is the basic practice of, let's say, Wicca, for example, because a lot of people, when they look up witchcraft, that's what they get. And when I first looked up witchcraft, that was the first thing I found was Wicca. And I was reading it and I was like, this just doesn't feel 100% me. Some of it does. Some of it really resonates, but the rest of it, I'm kind of like, this is too dogmatic and I don't like it. And the Hierophant does that. The Hierophant shows you where the dogma versus the learning is. So where can you find someone who is able to show you the path, but not tell you how far you need to go? And that's the real kind of mentor Hierophant. That's like the positive aspect. The negative would be a cult leader. Or they're like, listen to me, this is the truth. And maybe they are channeling, but who knows who the heck they're talking to on the other side anyway. So learning to really have discernment and have your own judgment is part of the process too. And sometimes it is trial by fire and it sucks. And I'm speaking from personal experience, where you listen to a being or a person and you put a lot of faith in them and that they're doing something that's going to help you on the path towards enlightenment. And then you realize a little bit later, ooh, Nope.
Wait a
I was wrong.
minute. Yeah.
So, being able to really connect to your own truth, and this is why the know thyself is so important, and why using tarot cards can be really important for yourself, because you're able to know, like, this is just my ego talking to me versus this is my soul. My soul says this is
Right.
true. And being able to discern that will make your magic much more powerful, because you'll know when you're trying to make something happen just with the force of your will and not uniting it with the force of your soul and your spirit. And so the two cards that know how to do that very well are High Priestess and the Magician. And in the traditional deck, the Magician is card number 1. And ones have a lot of meaning, right? New beginnings, stepping onto the path. And I love that the card has all 4 elements represented, because that's whenever I have one-on-one clients, whenever I do workshops on magic or witchcraft, that's where we begin. And that's where, when I started taking my first classes in person, with people, which I think is so powerful, even if it's in person online now, that's still the same. Essentially, it's direct transmission from a teacher to a student. I began that practice with the elements, and we went around the circle in the traditional way of air, fire, water, earth, and then spirit and center. And tarot does the same. The Magician has his sword, which is air. He has the wand, which is fire. He has the cup, which is water, and he has the pentacle or pentagram that's encircled, that represents earth. And he's able to now pick up all 4 of his tools and start playing with magic. And that's when the 5th element comes in. That's when spirit comes in, when they all unite, and that's the alchemy. And so recognizing all those aspects of yourself, like, when are you in your water? When are you in your fire? When are you really grounded? And when are you really airy? And all of them are good, but not when they're out of balance.
Right. Yeah, you got to bring it all. You got to bring it all together, and that's when you start to kind of realize why these tools are what they are. It's again, it's empowering. A lot of the woo kind of gets removed from it, because I think of you think of like any type of teenage witchcraft movie or whatever when you're a kid that you're watching, and there's some.
We are the weirdos, Mister.
The Craft, is that what that's from? Yeah. Okay. You see these things, and it's like the same thing when it comes to our horoscope. It's like, well, I've got this many planets in a water sign or whatever else. Understand?
Sorry, my phone is being a little turd, and the baking show song started.
Oh, is that what that was?
I can't get it to stop.
Well, I can't hear it.
Okay.
But
gonna come through.
Okay.
It's great. Go back. Say what you said. Start
all
at
right.
the beginning.
So it's well, I'm sure that it was very profound. When it comes to getting into magic or getting into to understanding any of the stuff from teenage witchcraft movies is what I was talking about. You see these things. You see a tarot deck. You see like the knife, or you see the athema. You see the pentacle. You see the wand, and you see the cup. You don't like. There's not really an explanation for it. You literally have to have a teacher to get what the symbolism is for these things, because it's not really necessarily inherently obvious. A lot of the things, it's not
right. They're mysteries. They're all mysteries.
Right. So, and that's part of it, right? Like the whole thing was that you encode, because you didn't want to get burned by the dopes. You didn't want to get burned by the people down the block that were all, meeting together, and they were kind of like, I don't understand why our crops have turned. It's like, it's the weather patterns, idiot. Like it's not the guy who's outside actually planting stuff in the ground. So,
although it might have been me in a past life.
Yeah, I've thought about that too. I'm like, I'm super nice in this lifetime. I'm sure I was a real dick before at some point.
I was probably that crazy witch on the corner in the hut with like only one tooth left, saying like, "You will regret this."
Well, I mean, it's possible.
And
Anyways, yeah, but the again, like, these are basic things. Like, being able to read your chart and understand these things are a good way for you to kind of get your stuff in balance, so that you can move literally into the out of the 101 classes, which is understanding exactly what these images mean. And that is always changing too. Like, I don't want to necessarily say that these basic the descriptions that we're giving are the only descriptions, that they're the only thing that they mean. Again, if you look at some of the symbolism in Hindu mythology, what an elephant meant back in the day in that area was like wealth and prosperity and like stubbornness. Right. And, you know, like, there's a whole lot of other things that go around any of these secret societies or any of these secret symbols, where there's always something to be learned from it. And part of the ability of being able to draw that energy in is not necessarily saying it. It's understanding what the inherent power of these things are, and just like through that being able to manifest or to draw stuff into your world, or to be able to cast spells, you know. This is one of the reasons why I feel like whether it's the hermit is like, you're closed off, you're doing your thing, you're doing your self work. For so many practitioners, book study, learning, self-study is incredibly important outside of the whole aspect of like moving into a coven, moving into working with other people, and actually like kind of sharing your gifts, which may or may not be directly. You know, if I know that when the last time, aside from the wedding, the last time you and I saw each other, when I'd come back from one of the men's retreats that I had helped facilitate at, I was juiced on energy because I'd been doing energy work the entire weekend. And I remember I was doing a massage session with somebody in the room next door, and you were holding a glass, and then I heard a breaking sound, and I was like, what was that? And you're like, oh, glass just shattered in my hand. So it's like, there's this give and take of these energies as well, that once you start to kind of tap into them, people around you who are also attuned to it, it starts to flow through them as well, you know?
Yeah. Thank goodness I haven't broken glass.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
There was a time where I was breaking glass like at least once a week. I was channeling a lot. Either that or I have a very firm grip like Aunt Marge, and I couldn't hold the glass anymore. Back to the
point. Yeah. See, I'll be the tangential one for this week. So yeah. After the magician, what's the other the card we were going to discuss?
The High Priestess. And this, I think the reason that she comes next is, so you have all these tools, you have all these elements, you recognize they're parts of yourself, and they're like, well, what do I do with it now? And so she opens you to those mysteries. She opens you to those things that we were talking about, to being able to dive into the meaning behind the pentacle, to dive behind the meaning of the sword, to know like when it's your word and your truth that's coming out versus you being able to clear cords and karma and cut ties. Like, how are you using those words? Are you using them in a way that's going to like divide, or in a way that's going to unite? And she is that fountain of intuition, and she holds the scrolls. So in the original, when you look at her, she's holding what looks like a Torah scroll, and that's not that's like a real reference. They wanted that there because there's also Hebrew letters on the pillars on either side of her. So it's this kind of like your ability to read into the situation and to interpret the words of God that are coming through comes from your ability to tap into your unconscious, to recognize the parts of yourself that are wanting to be acknowledged, because she's got water all around her. And that water is representative of the depths of you, the depths of your soul. And when Jung drew that image of a mind where the conscious mind is the top of the iceberg and the unconscious is the rest of it, it's that feeling of, okay, you touched the tip of the iceberg with the magician, you landed, your boat got there, and you put your flag on it. Okay, now it's time to dive. It's time to go in. And that's the High Priestess. And so she kind of opens the floodgates of knowledge. And there's a couple other cards that happen on the way. And I love that the immediate next one is the Empress, which is all groundedness, and the Emperor, which is even more groundedness. So it's like, as you go into this super kind of like, oh, I am so confused, mystery school kind of world, where you've got the High Priestess literally showing you just the millions of things that you didn't even know you didn't know. Then you get a little bit of grounded earth energy, and it helps the cards start to balance you as you go along their journey. Because then you're ready for the Hierophant to come in and say, like, okay, here's some things that you need to know as you move on. And then you get united with your soul in the Lovers. And so it just keeps on going and going. And there's so many ways, like you said, to interpret the cards. And that's part of the game, right? So for you, when you draw a card, if the Emperor comes up, it's going to be something entirely different than if I draw the Emperor, because you and I, one, masculine and feminine embodiments in male-female bodies come out very differently. I have a masculine side, you have a feminine side, but when the Emperor comes in, it's asking us to step into that masculinity. So it's going to look very different when you do it versus when I do it. So the same for the High Priestess. A lot of people see it and they're like, I don't like dogma. Why is she called the High Priestess? And I'm like, you are becoming your own spiritual authority. It's exciting. It's not about me being on a hierarchy level within this coven. It's about me knowing that I have authority, holding that space for facilitation and for growth, and encouraging you to then step into the same place.
Yeah. Trusting your intuition. Yeah.
Right. And if you don't trust your intuition, you will fall victim to dogma. You will become a follower of somebody else who's playing the lower energetic frequency of the Hierophant, who's telling you what to believe, and you will believe it because you don't have a strong connection to your own truth.
Yeah, I really like the imagery from the Tarot Illuminati deck that shows. The Hierophant he looks like a Catholic priest, literally, and it's like what the concept is obviously of what it's supposed to mean, at least, is somebody who literally is a spiritual authority. Like, they're supposed to be a connection with God, and then the fact that it is like the same image can be comforting and discouraging to people because of all the horrible things that have happened with the Catholic Church in the past couple of years. So it's like I love that the shadow is displayed in the images themselves as well, kind of shows both sides of the coin.
Yeah, I feel like that particular deck, Tarot Illuminati, I'm looking through it, they really emphasize a lot of the mainstream notions of what the cards have represented in the past, and a lot of the fears. They play off a lot of the fears. It's really beautiful imagery, but there is a certain type of darkness, even though it's like the Illuminati, which should be enlightening. I don't know. I've always found the images a little bit
a little disturbing.
Yeah, a little scary, a little disturbing. Versus like I said, the Hierophant in the Wild Unknown, the High Priestess in the Wild Unknown is probably one of the prettiest cards ever. It's a Siberian tiger holding a crystal ball in the moon. So it's like, what does that mean? But a lot of times when big cats show up, it is like spiritual authority and power. They don't call the lion the king of the jungle or king of the savannah for no reason. It's this sense of being the apex predator in the environment, which essentially means being in your power, really stepping into your power. And so the High Priestess is doing just that with the reader. She is helping you step into your power. The Magician is like, okay, here's all the tools of the illusion we live in, and you can play as much as you want. But if you want to master yourself, you have to move past that. You have to move past just wanting to like manifest something just to see if it works. Which at some point, it's good for your ego to do that. It's good for your brain to recognize that magic is real, because something that you said made somebody else go, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe. I had a dream about that. And then you're like, okay, cool, I'm tapping into something. That's great. Don't knock yourself for it, but don't let that be all you're looking for. Speaking of other things that help us figure out our intuition, I also wanted to touch on runes, because that was coming up a lot for me this week. Especially practicing for like the sigil workshop, and one of the first runes in the Elder Futhark, which is the oldest Proto-Germanic, Proto-European language that has a writing system that we know of. It's organized not in a way that makes sense to our brains. And the reason it's called Futhark is because those are the first three letters of that alphabet. So Fehu, Uru, well, the ah in that sound after Thorisaz is Ansuz. And Ansuz is the rune of Odin, who happens to have two ravens. And I was like, oh, he is the Hierophant. So when you were saying the person could be embodied, they could also be disembodied. They could be really beautiful master teachers on an energetic level that are operating from a much, much higher dimension because they've ascended, and they're here to help us tap into that. And this particular rune goes really well with Saraswati. It goes really well with High Priestess and Magician, in the sense that it helps inspire your words, your songs, your poetry, your incantation. It gives you more inspired mental activity, your inspiration. It's like this almost the energy of Odin getting hit by the lightning on the world tree when he's hanging there. That's how he got the runes in the first place, was this big aha moment after sacrificing his ego self. And so when we're looking at meditation, sometimes people are really not drawn to Sanskrit, which makes no sense in my mind because I'm like, it's so beautiful. But if you want to work with some other language, and maybe you're just intimidated by the length of the mantras we're presenting, which we're about to get to a real long one. Ansuz is something you can say out loud very easily, Ansuz, and it's super duper easy to draw. It's just
it looks like an F.
It looks like an F, but the two lines that are horizontal are actually more diagonal down. So it's like drawing an F, but draw the line slightly diagonally down, and you've got Ansuz. And it's funny because it was also used as a weapon, and they always say knowledge is power. And so it's that idea of this rune has multiple meanings that will take you so much time to delve into and absorb and integrate and investigate. And just by drawing it on a paper over and over again, like you're doodling, and repeating the name, you will be doing a very, very powerful meditation on inspiration and incorporating words and spell work into your daily life.
Yeah.
Just wanted
I'm
to
glad you did.
that.
I'm glad you
Is
threw
there
it out there.
anything else?
Well, no, I was just gonna kind of piggyback on that and say that is our the podcast is called Mantra and Magic, and that mantras don't necessarily just have to be Sanskrit, and magic is found in every culture, whether it's shamanic cultures of South America or Central America, the Indian, Native American, cultures of shamanism here, or
Indian,
India from India. Like we've talked about before, the Egyptian hieroglyphs and a lot of the imagery that's from there. Like when you start to look at this stuff and you see it as more than just artwork, you start to see the hidden symbols that are kind of that are present there. You might find something that really, really calls to you. It may be Mesopotamian, and again, these are some of the reasons why I think some of these languages are considered dead, is because it is literally a squashing of the history of those places. There's not a lot of people who speak ancient Sumerian, the actual language. No, it's fallen out of my head at this moment, but like these languages aren't used in like normal conversation. Spanish, French, English. These are also languages that have been structured by the society as opposed to being quote unquote handed down by the gods or handed down through centuries for being an energetic language that is that has a meaning without being tied to a culture, so be open to that. Be open to the possibility that there's something out there that you might be drawn to. I was listening to one of our old podcasts when I was uploading some new things to Patreon, which, by the way, Patreon has been updated. If anybody is wanting to look at some of the offerings there, and you were talking a lot at that point in time, which was about 5 years ago, about fairy magic. So there are all kinds of different paths that you can travel down, and there may be things that call more to you because either in a past life these things have worked through you, or in this present life, there's a lesson that you're meant to learn in some things, you know?
Right. I mean, and there's so many ways to learn, so many ways. Like in shamanic, I'm glad you said shamanic cultures, they learn directly from the plants. They don't have like handy dandy books and cards. They have their teacher and they're an apprentice, and they have to go out and they have to figure out which plants are going to fix whatever it is that they're called to do. Or they have to do a complete plant dieta where literally nothing, they don't imbibe anything except water and a specific plant, so that they learn how that plant works in the body. And you can do it with anything. You can do it with lavender. You can do it with rose. You can do it with goat's rue. You can do it with nettles. It doesn't have to be a quote unquote like hallucinogenic plant. It can be any plant. And I like to really emphasize that because a lot of people forget that we can learn directly.
Plant teachers.
Some people will think about it with like mushrooms. Like I learned so much on mushrooms. Well, anyone would, but it's because they have a whole network. And when we talk about like the first and second dimension, that's where they are. And a lot of us forget that because we're constantly trying to strive for the fifth dimension, for the eighth dimension, for the 12th dimension, 14, 16, whatever, however far you want to go. But we forget that we also have teachers and helpers and tools that are on the lower end of the spectrum, technically, with numbers, but they're just operating on a different level. And so if you feel like, you know what, I'm really scared of the dogma. I just came out of a religion or a cult that was just too much, and I don't know where to go from here. Start with the plants, start with the crystals, sit with them on your own, meditate, maybe repeat something like Ansu's or Saraswati or Eim, like something really simple, and just hold, or if you're doing plants, drink a tea or ingest that plant and see what comes up for you. See what those messages are that are wanting to come through. And that's like a very high priestess practice. And that's like going into the hermit and into some of the other cards that are later in the major arcana, because you're doing the inner work without the Hierophant involved. And then the Hierophant becomes that other type of existence that we don't like to call animate. Although if you are the type of pagan who ascribes to everything as, you know, vibrating and alive, then they are animate. They may not seem like they have consciousness to us. It may not seem like when you walk up to a parsley plant that it's conscious and aware, but it has so much medicine to offer. And it's part of almost every mix of like women's steaming that I do. So just being aware that you have magical plants, even if you only have a few types of herbs in your garden, is something that would be really fun to begin with on a level of learning that most people forget is available.
And if you are like really wanting to go down the rabbit hole of herbalism or herbology, look up plant wave or MIDI sprout. I think it used to be called MIDI sprout, but it's there's scientists that are now using receptors to actually listen to or make music with plants because of the tones that the plants are actually making. So we talk about plants being a living thing, but they're pretty much kind of there on the side, and we walk on them. We don't really think anything about it. There's consciousness there, you know. So, and they have things to share. It's the same thing with like you were saying with mushrooms. Or I'm really interested to see what they would do with a plant like the ayahuasca root or something, just to kind of see what the sounds that are coming off of that are, like what the frequencies are that are moving through it.
Yeah. Well, especially because this is a brief tangent I want to indulge in. They always say that you have to lessen what you're eating with dieta, not just because you're preparing your body to cleanse itself, but because ayahuasca is a very quiet plant, and to hear her voice and to hear chacuna's voice, which is the other plant that's in the tea that creates the dimethyltryptamine DMT experience. When you want to hear them, their voices are quieter than the rest. So I wonder if like the actual plant sings quieter than say like broccoli. It's like,
Yeah, that makes me think of Sausage Party. Have you seen that? Where they have the corn?
No, I was thinking.
Yeah, I don't want to say it's similar, but it's like it starts off with an ear of corn, you know, singing to the gods. But funny movie. Okay.
So speaking of the gods, I can always bring it around, bro. I can always bring it around. what is the freight train?
Okay,
Saraswati
so
mantra?
the mantra that we are, the freight train that we're talking about is the Mahavidya mantra, the Queen of Knowledge mantra. The only reason it's really considered a Saraswati mantra is because her name is smack dab in the middle of it. The rest of the other words that are in the mantra are all seed sounds, and I'm not going to break down what all of them mean. You can look them up. But right smack in the middle.
Or you can take your
Or
workshop.
exactly, or you can come join my Patreon. I'd be more than happy to send out this information because I've got it. I mean, that makes sense, right? So the version of Saraswati that is invoked or that is used or said in this mantra is Nilatari Saraswati. Nilatari is blue, so it's the blue form of Saraswati. In Tibetan Buddhism, Nilatari is actually Saraswati is herself as well as another form of Tara. So she's the blue Tara in Tibetan Buddhism. So the mantra for this is Eim Hrim Shrim Klim Sauh. Klim Hrim Eim Blum Strim Nilatari Saraswati. Dram, Drim, Klim, Blum, Sauh. Eim, Hrim, Shrim, Klim, Sauh, Sauh, Hrim, Swaha.
Now, is that the pace that you usually go?
Whenever I am doing my mantras, whenever I'm doing my japas, I fluctuate my pace. So I will start off where I speak it very, very clearly and very, very specifically so that energetic is moving through my system. So the energy, whether it's a deity or whatever, it knows what it is that I'm calling in. And then I'll fluctuate. Part of it is to keep me engaged in the mantra during my japa. And part of it too is to see what the feeling is and how it's different for me, because this is all experimental, right? Like this is your experience.
Right.
You get to have the experience that you do with whatever your meditation, your mantra practice, your magical practice, your spiritual practice. So that's another reason why a lot of the times it takes longer, like to do one of these mantras, because there are, it's a long mantra. And if you just blow through it, again, the words that you're saying aren't going to come out clearly. It sounds like you're more doing it more for a speed thing because you're trying to get off of your mat and get on about your day. But it's like take the time, say the words specifically, look up what each word means, see what, maybe one word next to another word. If it sounds like a different word in the Sanskrit dictionary, like if it sounds similar, see what that is. And then see if you're focusing on what that meaning means, if the mantra feels different to you. This is one of my all-time favorite mantras. It is one that I use almost, I don't want to say in every single one of my sessions, but during my sessions, this is more commonly, I use this more commonly once I have dropped somebody down and I've worked on their back and then I get down to their legs. It's a very calm and soothing mantra. It has a very wave-like feel to it. And the clarity that people can get once they've kind of gotten dropped down into their body and are really like, they're not, I don't want to say they're not present, but when they're really in their body and allowing their body to do the healing that they're able to get done on the table, the stuff that seems to come through for them when I've talked to them after the fact has been pretty profound. I've had numerous clients say, I had a startling realization while after you had moved off of my back. And they don't really say specifically when it is, but I know that it's this mantra because after I get done doing it, my mind is usually really clear. I don't want to say it's like going like really fast because that kind of entails that there's an anxiety or something to it, but it seems like I think really clearly. Ideas come to me really clearly. And when I'm speaking, my words flow clearly. There's not, if you've been listening to this podcast for the past 6 episodes, you realize a lot of times I'm like, and I get stuck on trying to get the words out whenever I do this mantra. Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy it so much is it helps me to communicate more clearly. The description of it says, this freight train mantra is a succession of seed sound and is therefore essentially untranslatable. Faithful repetition will, over time, transform the sayer into a person of great spiritual knowledge. So in the in Thomas Ashley Farron's audiobook, he talks about it and says, you know, if you're wanting to understand sacred literature, it's very helpful. I think this literally puts us more in contact with our higher self. So the energetics that are, whether it's another deity or other things that you're working with, you're open and more clear for those messages to come through. So huge fan of this mantra. If you are a big book learner, a big nerd like Amy and I are, I cannot recommend this mantra enough. So
Yeah, I was trying to do it the other day without looking at the page, and kept on wanting to say Dram, Drim, Drim.
Yeah.
And I was like, no,
Klim, yeah.
Klim. It's like those alliterations. But also it's good because stumbling over Klim, like what was I afraid to bring towards me? What was I afraid to know? Right. So paying attention to that as if you do decide to really tackle this one, and I think I'll write out the whole thing on the show notes. But if you really want to do further study, I highly recommend going to Jeremy's Patreon and investing in that, because even though I love mantra and I love the idea of becoming a queen of knowledge, this one has not like settled for me yet the way that the other freight trains have. The other ones come out so easily. I can hum them as I'm going to sleep and I'll fall asleep faster. This one, I always stumble over that second verse after the Nilatari Saraswati. And so I think as you're doing it, just paying attention. Where does your mind start to forget? Where does your mind start to wander? Because when they get really long, it's really easy to lose that focus we were talking about. So again, this will train you to be mindful. And look, hey, we brought it all.
And we made it to an hour. Yay.
We did it. So yes, check out the Patreons, check out our Instagrams, Jeremy Renta and Voice, Hands, and Heart, and Witch Goddess Mama for me. And take the time, if you can, to write a review and rate our podcast on iTunes so that more people who might want to hear this will be able to find us, because that's the only way that they start to share it, is if people look like they're responding.
Yeah, and give feedback as to things that you like or dislike about what we're doing as well. Like any criticism is constructive criticism, honestly. Like, don't be a douche. That's for some reason it got to the point in our culture where we think that, criticism means that you're being critical. Well, that's what critique is. People are professional critics to listen to something and go, well, this is something where I was lost and this is what I think could be better. So,
right. And if you're part of, our Patreons, so either Jeremy's or mine, you're going to get voting power too for what we talk about, because that's something we're starting to implement. Is anybody who's subscribed to those, because now we do have a few subscribers, is to put up a poll and say, hey, would you rather learn about this type of magic, this type of occult society, this type of alien conspiracy theory, like whatever it is, and how it relates to a specific mantra. Kind of bringing it all together as a community is better, because if we're able to serve you in your learning path, then we're doing our job as hierophants. And
there are multiple tiers where I'm working still on making sure that the structure makes exactly the most sense to you and for me for what it is that I'm presenting. But one of the tiers includes a group Zoom meeting. So for everybody to get on, there will be a discussion. There will be an oracle poll, and then there will be kind of a Q&A. So if there'll be a topic that we discuss throughout the monthly session, and then if anybody wants to jump in with questions, be more than happy to do that. I really want the community to kind of start coming together. And then if you want one-on-one sessions, like Amy said, you can reach me at voicehandsheart.com. You can reach me on my Instagram, either Jeremy Renta or at voicehandsheart. And then there's also a tier on my Patreon for one-on-one sessions. So go check that out. Please let us know what it is that you guys love or dislike about the podcast. And we'll see you next week.
We will. See you.
We'll see you soon. Yeah.
All the dimensions.
All right.